Ever feel like time is slipping away, like it's this unstoppable force?
Yeah.
Well, get this. What if time isn't even real?
Hmm.
We're diving into the mind-bending question of whether time is just something our brains create
Okay.
or if it's a fundamental part of the universe.
Right.
We'll be using excerpts from an article called "Is Time an Emergent Property of Consciousness?"
Interesting.
Yeah, the article really makes you think, what if our experience of time
Yeah.
is just a construct of our minds
Uh-huh.
and not something that actually exists out there in the universe?
Wow.
We'll be looking at things like the block universe theory, how entropy plays a role, and even
Uh-huh.
how different species might perceive time completely differently from us.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So to kick things off, one of the things that struck me is this contrast between how physicists view time
Right.
and how we experience it in our everyday lives.
It's really intriguing.
Right.
Physics treats time as this dimension, almost like space. They plug it into equations as this parameter.
Yeah, just another variable.
Exactly. But then you have our brains, which create this whole narrative, this story around time.
Right. Past, present, future, that whole linear sequence.
Exactly. And this leads to a thought-provoking question that the article brings up.
Okay.
Imagine a universe with no conscious observers, none at all.
Like nobody to experience it.
Exactly. Would that universe still have time as we understand it?
That's a good question.
Like, sure, you'd still have stars exploding and galaxies forming and black holes doing their thing.
Yeah, all those events would still happen.
Right, but without someone there to experience the now, to observe those changes happening, would it really be time in the way that we think of it?
I see what you mean. It's like the difference between something changing
Yes.
versus someone actually experiencing that change.
Exactly. So it really makes you wonder about how our own minds create this experience of time. Like, how does our brain actually do that?
Right. It's like, if time isn't this objective thing flowing along, how does my brain make it feel like it is?
So think about it this way. Your brain is constantly getting all this sensory information all the time, right?
Yeah. Sights, sounds, smells, the works.
Exactly. And the article talks about how certain regions of the brain, especially the hippocampus and the cerebral cortex, are key for processing all of that.
So they're like the timekeepers of the brain.
In a way, yes. The hippocampus is like the memory center, linking all these individual moments together to create this sense of a timeline.
Ah, so without memory, there's no before and after.
Exactly. And then there's this other mind-blowing thing.
Oh, what's that?
Our brains are also making predictions about what's going to happen next.
What? Wait.
Yeah, based on our past experiences and all these patterns it's picked up on. This adds to the feeling that time is moving forward, like it's got this direction,
Like we're on this one-way track, we can't go back.
Yeah.
And I've definitely noticed that when I'm super engrossed in something,
Yeah.
time just flies by. Is that my brain in overdrive, trying to predict what's next?
It could be. And of course, we humans can do this incredible thing. Mental time travel.
You mean like remembering the past and imagining the future?
Exactly. And that really strengthens our concept of time as this linear thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have those weird moments when our perception of time gets all messed up.
Right, like when you're in a dangerous situation and everything seems to slow down.
Exactly. Or the opposite, like when you're having fun and hours feel like minutes.
Yeah, it really shows how much our experience of time is subjective.
Exactly. So it's like our consciousness actually has a hand on the controls of how fast or slow time feels.
Makes you wonder if time is more of an experience than a fundamental thing.
I think that's a great point.
And speaking of different experiences of time, it makes me wonder about how animals perceive time.
Oh, yeah. That's a great segue.
Like, do they have the same sense of past, present, and future that we do? But before we get into that,
Okay.
I'm really curious about this whole block universe idea.
Ah, yes, the block universe model.
It's like this mind-blowing concept where the past, present, and future all exist at the same time, right?
Exactly. There's no actual flow of time in the block universe.
Wow.
It's like everything is already laid out there like a map, and it's just our consciousness, our perception, that creates the illusion of moving through it.
Okay, so how does entropy fit into all of this? Because we always hear that everything in the universe tends towards disorder.
Right.
Like things break down, they decay, they get more chaotic over time.
Yeah, that's entropy. And it creates this sense of directionality.
Like an arrow of time pointing from order to chaos?
Exactly. So even if everything exists at once in this block universe, entropy is what gives us that feeling of time moving forward.
So you're saying our very perception of time might be tied to observing this increase in entropy.
It's a fascinating possibility.
But wouldn't entropy still happen even if there was nobody there to witness it? Like, even without conscious observers, wouldn't the universe still tend toward disorder?
That's the intriguing part. Entropy itself doesn't need an audience. But our perception of time, our experience of it, might be intricately linked to witnessing that increase in entropy.
Okay, my brain needs a minute to process that.
Yeah, it's a big idea.
Because it raises a big question. If everything is already laid out in this block universe,
Yeah.
does free will even exist?
That's a question that's puzzled philosophers for centuries.
Right.
It really challenges our fundamental assumptions about choice and agency.
Like, if the future already exists
Yeah.
alongside the past, do we really have control over our actions?
It's a tough one to wrap your head around.
Definitely.
But let's switch gears for a second
Okay.
and think about how other beings might experience time. The article points out some fascinating examples of how animal perception differs from our own.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. It seems like our human experience of time might just be one interpretation among many, not necessarily the definitive version.
Exactly. Their senses, their brains, it's all wired differently.
Really?
Take dogs, for example. While they may not have the same detailed recollection of past events that we do,
Oh, interesting.
they seem to have a sense of duration
Okay.
that's closely linked to their physiological processes.
So my dog might not remember yesterday's walk in vivid detail.
Right.
But he still experiences time passing in his own way.
Precisely.
Mm.
And then there are bees, which have been shown to anticipate time of day when food sources will be available. This suggests a kind of temporal awareness,
Yeah.
an ability to track time
Yeah.
in relation to their environment and needs.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
It makes you wonder about all the different ways animals experience time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what about creatures like octopuses? They have those
Oh.
decentralized nervous systems.
Like
Who
the-
knows how they perceive time?
Octopuses are a fascinating case. Their ability to process information in parallel,
Yeah.
across their bodies, rather than just in one centralized brain.
Where it's like they have 8 brains.
Right. That could lead to a completely different experience of time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Some researchers even think that they might experience something like multiple
Wow.
simultaneous streams of consciousness,
Really?
each with its own perception of time.
Whoa. That's blowing my mind a little.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It really shows how much we don't understand about consciousness and its relationship to time.
Definitely.
So, getting back to humans,
Okay.
if our perception shapes our experience of time so much,
Yeah.
what are the bigger implications here?
Right.
I mean, this has to change how we think about reality itself, right?
Absolutely. If time isn't this fundamental independent entity that we've always thought it was,
Yeah.
our whole understanding of reality needs a serious overhaul. Maybe reality isn't actually divided into past, present, and future the way we perceive it.
Yeah, we could be living in that block-like universe where everything is already laid out.
Right.
And our perception of time is just our limited way of making sense of it all.
That's a real possibility. And if that's the case, then consciousness isn't just passively observing time, right?
No.
It's actively shaping how time unfolds, how it manifests for us.
That raises some crazy possibilities for the future.
It does.
It's like, what if we develop technology that lets us manipulate our perception of time?
Oh, yeah.
Imagine slowing down time during a special moment.
Yeah.
Or fast-forwarding through something boring.
The article touches on that.
Does it?
And it's a fascinating thought. Such technologies would totally change everything.
Right.
How we live, how we work, even how we age.
But even more mind-blowing
Yeah.
is this idea that if time is an illusion,
Uh-huh.
then all moments are eternally happening in some way.
Right.
Past selves, future selves, all coexisting in this grand tapestry of space-time.
It's a profound thought, isn't it?
It really is.
It challenges our whole idea of individuality
Yeah.
and suggests a deeper connection between everything and everyone.
I'm getting a little dizzy from all this cosmic thinking. But before we get completely lost in the space-time continuum, there's one more thing about time we need to talk about. Perception. The article has this thought experiment. What would happen if our perception of time was suddenly stripped away? Like, what if we couldn't experience time as past, present, and future anymore?
Yes. It asks us to imagine experiencing reality without that familiar filter of time.
Right.
Would we perceive reality as this static, unchanging thing?
Yeah.
Or would consciousness itself cease to make sense in a world without a before and after?
Those are some heavy questions.
They are.
It makes you wonder if our perception of time is just a crutch for our limited human minds.
Perhaps it's the only way we can grasp a reality that's far more complex than we can imagine.
Right.
Our brains need to simplify things, break them down into manageable chunks.
Yeah.
And maybe time is the tool we use to do that.
But what if, by letting go of that tool, we could see a deeper level of reality? A reality where everything is interwoven, past, present, and future, all as one.
It's a fascinating possibility.
It is.
It's like trying to imagine a color you've never seen before.
Exactly. But even if we can't fully grasp it, just thinking about these ideas stretches our minds.
It does.
And makes us question our assumptions about the world.
I agree.
And that's what's so cool about these deep dives.
Right.
They don't always give us answers.
Yeah.
But they help us ask better questions.
Yes.
And see things from new perspectives.
Absolutely.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
It's like we fell down a rabbit hole
Yeah.
and ended up in a whole new dimension of thought.
That's a great way to put it.
So before we completely lose track of time,
Right.
which ironically might be the point,
Yeah.
let's try to recap what we've learned.
Okay.
What are the big takeaways from all of this?
Well, it's easy to get lost in all these mind-bending ideas.
Yeah.
So it's good to,
Yeah.
come back down to earth a bit.
Right. Ground ourselves.
Exactly. And I think the most important takeaway is that time might not be what we think it is. It might not be this fundamental objective thing ticking away independently of us.
Right. It's not just a universal clock keeping everything in sync.
Right. Our deep dive suggests that time,
Yeah.
as we experience it,
Yeah.
could be an emergent property of consciousness.
So it's like our brains are creating this feeling of a flowing now
Exactly.
from the raw data of reality.
That's a good way to put it. And that means our individual perception of time is subjective,
Yeah.
fluid, and maybe even changeable. It can speed up, slow down, get distorted depending on what our brains are focused on,
Right, like we were talking about.
or even how our bodies are reacting.
Exactly. So time isn't this rigid universal metronome.
Go.
And if we think about the block universe,
Right.
where the past, present, and future all exist at the same time, then it's like our experience of time is just us navigating a path through this already existing block.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
And it brings up those deep questions
Yeah.
about free will and the nature of reality.
Like, if everything is already laid out,
Yeah.
if the future exists alongside the past,
Uh-huh.
what does that mean for our choices,
Right.
our actions?
That's a lot to think about.
It really is. But even if we don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
just exploring these questions helps us think critically
Absolutely.
about things we usually take for granted.
It's like we've upgraded our understanding of reality.
Yeah.
We're left with more questions than we started with,
True.
but we also have a much deeper appreciation for how complex and interconnected everything is.
So where do we go from here? Is time an illusion or not? What's the final verdict?
I don't think there is a simple yes or no answer.
Okay.
The nature of time is still a mystery,
Right.
and there are a lot of different perspectives on it. But what we can say for sure is that our experience of time is deeply connected to consciousness.
It's not this separate thing.
No.
Ticking away whether we're here or not.
Exactly.
And that realization has huge implications.
It does.
For how we understand ourselves,
Yeah.
the universe. It touches on everything from the role of the observer to the potential for future technologies.
Right.
That might let us actually manipulate our experience of time.
Imagine that.
Imagine a world where we could control how fast or slow time feels.
The possibilities are both amazing and kind of scary.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But the fact that we're even having this conversation shows how far we've come.
Right.
It's like we've opened this door to a whole new realm of questions and possibilities.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Oh.
But I hope this has given you plenty to think about.
Me too.
Has this changed how you think about time?
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
Exploring these mind-blowing ideas. Challenging what we thought we knew. And hopefully, it's sparked a little more curiosity about the world around us.
I think so, too.
Maybe even see time in a whole new light now.
That's what we hope for. So, until next time, keep asking those big questions.
Yes.
Keep exploring.
And digging deeper.
And remember, even if time might be an illusion,
Yeah.
the present moment is always real.
It is.
Make it count.